Trever Molenaar from Molenaar McNeice. Real estate agents down in Illawarra district, that territory. Is that right?
Yeah.
How you going, mate? Welcome to Property Insights.
No, thank you.
So, Illawarra district, just to get me around that, we're talking about Wollongong. Yeah, so how far does... I actually don't know how far Illawarra comes up towards Sydney and how far beyond Wollongong it goes, either south or west. So what area is it we're talking about now?
Yeah, well, we basically cover most of that area, but we're divided by this this big, I guess, national park between us and Sydney. So that's the northern border.
Yeah.
And then we basically go down to the far south coast, basically.
So you go to Stanwell Park, you include Stanwell Park and all
Very
those
much
sorts of
so.
areas. And,
Yeah.
and west of Wollongong?
Well, it's the escarpment. So we're bound by the escarpment
Right.
of the ocean. So we have a very small peninsula.
Yeah, so you sort of go that escarpment. That's the road you go up, like it's like a mountain, and you go up. Then on the other side of it's Robertson and those sorts of areas.
Yep, and the Highlands.
Yeah, to the Highlands. Yeah, okay. So you drive up to the Highlands. So you're everything on the other side of the Highlands, Southern Highlands, and from pretty much the national park down to Wollongong and beyond Wollongong. I don't know how far that goes down, Thirroul and all those sorts of places, I guess, I presume.
Yeah, well, Thirroul's north of it, but we go
Okay.
quite a bit.
The only reason I know Thirroul is my cousin lives there. Right, so that district, are we talking residential now? We're talking about residential market?
Very much so, yeah.
So what joyous moments has the Illawarra district enjoyed over the last, let's say, COVID years, 19, 20, 21, into the beginning of 22? What's it look like down there? Is it the same as everywhere else in Australia?
It's the same along the whole eastern seaboard. I think we've been in a market which has been booming.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people coming into the industry they don't really know what the market was pre-boom. So it's been a 80% plus.
Wow. Increase?
Increase, yeah.
So give me a sense of house in... I mean, I don't know the different districts, but a house in Wollongong, the freestanding house, maybe no views, just a nice little 3-bedder, maybe 2 bathrooms, a carport or something like that. What's the average price of a property? And what was it before the boom?
Before the boom, you could pick up things well under $1 million.
Right.
So you could pick up houses for $750, $800.
Right. Now?
Not going to happen.
What are we looking at
So
now?
you're looking at, depending on how far north you go, the further north you go, the more expensive it
More
does
towards
go.
Sydney?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, very much so. So that Thirroul region is one of the more affluent regions. And then certainly the further east you go, the more expensive it gets, closer to the water.
Closer to the water. The further north and the closer to the east, the more the price.
Yeah.
Well, the closer, the better, the more likely you got a view, and the further north you go, you're
Proximity
paying
to the water. That's
so.
the thing.
And what's happening now? Is it starting to come back a bit?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And this is the market I love. This is the market where it's a little bit slower paced, and not for that reason, but for the reason that people can actually buy and sell in this market. So we've come back just like the whole of New South Wales. We've probably come back 10 to possibly 20% in some markets. But it's just taken the edge off. It's taken that fear of missing out. And now I think the media is doing a lot to really ram it home to a lot of vendors that things have changed. So they're doing a lot of the work for us, but it certainly has changed.
So during the pandemic period, or before I go there, would you consider Illawarra a regional area?
Yeah.
It's regional in your view, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, got it. So during the pandemic period, let's say middle of the pandemic, were you seeing a lot of people leaving Sydney and or Melbourne for that matter and going to your zone?
Yeah, huge.
What was that? What was driving that?
I think the proximity to Sydney. There's a massive commuter base that leave Thirroul Station every single morning, something like 22,000
That's
people.
the railway station.
Yep. So, and that alone, that proximity to Sydney is giving a lot of people lifestyle options. So you can be back in your front doorstep and out on the beach with still daylight to go. So I think a lot of people were really coming, up to about 50 to 60% of our market as far as buyers were effectively Sydney people.
Not buying to invest, but buying to live.
Buying to live, yeah,
right.
lifestyle.
So how? But I refresh my memory. How long does it take to get from Thirroul to say? I mean, are the people who travel to Sydney, or are they travelling to Sutherland? Like, where
most people will drive to Sutherland,
right,
and then they'll commute in. So
right.
It's generally an hour, possibly an hour and a half, depending on traffic.
To the city.
Yep.
Yeah. You mean by train?
Yeah, both.
Yeah, by train, by train. So is that considered acceptable, like an hour and a half?
Yeah.
People will do that.
Yeah, it used to be we were the far south coast, and now that's not the case anymore. So people are coming well south of where we are to get those elusive bargains.
Yeah. So people decide to live in the Illawarra district during the COVID period because they probably couldn't afford an apartment in the city, in Sydney Metro, and they thought, well, hang on, if I'm going to pay 1.2 million for an apartment, I might as well go and buy a house down that way.
Yep.
That's
fair.
Yeah, that's fair. But people were also prepared to commute that far.
Yeah.
But what's the change in that? Because I remember many years ago, people used to say to me, if it's more than a 40-minute commute, either by car or by train or by taxi, however, bus, whatever, people don't want to buy it into the city. What is it you think is the dynamic that's changed people's preparedness to commute for an hour and a half as opposed to 40, 45 minutes? Like, is it because they've got a tablet and they can sit there and do their work, or is it trains more comfortable? What's happening?
I think it's the whole evolution of how we work today. So people aren't commuting 9 to 5 Monday through Friday anymore.
Right.
So you'll find that people might be commuting 1 or 2 days into the city. They might work from home the other 3 days.
Right. There's a trade-off.
There's a trade-off now. And the trade-off is the lifestyle orientation.
Yeah, I know in my own business, like we rotate our staff. So in the city here, so we've got 100 odd staff who come in the city and 160 or something. So, but they only have to come in 3 days a week, so they have 2 days off. Some even come in less than 3 days. And I guess what you say makes sense, because they say, well, if I have to put up with travelling an hour and a half 2 days a week or 3 days a week, it's not that bad, because the other days I'm at home and I got 4 days at home, including Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah. And if you're travelling an hour, it's not that far anymore. So it used to be where we were so far away that, because I think everything's just more efficient these days too. They can work while they're on the train. They can do a lot of these things, whereas work has just really evolved now.
Yeah, that's interesting, and you can do more work on the train too, because our tablets and our mobile phones and everything else allows us just to do more work. Once upon a time, the best thing people had was a laptop, and that looked a bit odd on the train. But now you've got a tablet, or you can do it on your mobile phone. I do a lot of my stuff on my mobile phone, emails, etc. So people have opted for lifestyle changes, and COVID probably, it wasn't because of COVID. COVID just prompted us to think about this sort of stuff. So has also there been a change in the job market in Wollongong? In other words, have people sort of started to discover, well, hang on, I can get it. Wollongong is growing, or the district Illawarra is growing. I can actually do this. I can get a job in the Illawarra district. Has there been much change in that dynamic?
Yeah. There's a lot of employment in Wollongong in itself. So even
jobs available.
Very much so. So even though there is a big commuter base, there is still a very much an employment orientation within the city itself.
That's interesting. So is that like across the board, or are we talking about predominantly mining, Port Kembla or whatever? I mean, I don't know, Port Kembla is still going these days, Port Kembla still. But are the jobs across the board?
Across the board, yeah. Very much along trades too. There's a huge trade base, especially in the northern suburbs. There's a massive trade base there, and a shortage too.
You mean there's demand for tradies in the northern suburbs?
Yeah.
Like to work there?
Yeah. I would say actually right across Wollongong.
Right, there's demand for trade, yeah, which is pretty much the same in Sydney. So,
anyway.
and I guess, I mean, I only talk about one regional area up in Ballina Way and Lismore Ballina, and I know that tradies up there actually get paid more up there per hour than they do in Sydney, and I don't, man. Plus, you got the lifestyle,
Yeah, very much so.
And it's less stress as well. I mean, and travelling to work is easy because you only got to drive for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you're wherever you got to go to. Whereas in Sydney, it's always a 40-minute drive, 50-minute drive. So is the same happening in the Wollongong area?
Yeah, very much so.
And tradies can get good dough.
I think they're paid very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are these tradies then turning that into becoming buyers?
Funnily enough, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Good segue into it, but it was.
Yeah.
It's where a lot of these tradies have become, I guess, small-time developers, put a duplex down, they renovate their homes. So a lot of that sort of beach house community has been building trades.
Yeah, and how much, I don't know if it still is, how much of the dynamic or the culture is, surfboard riders, coastal people, because it used to be 20, 30 years ago,
Yeah.
Has that changed?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, there is still the old school local surfers.
Yeah, that's my cousin. He's got a
Yeah.
place to throw it, and he's like he'd be 70, still surfs. So
Yeah.
he'd be more than 70. He's still surfing, but that's why I moved there.
Yeah, and there's some great breaks, and that's why it's well known for that
Yeah.
reason. But it definitely has gentrified now. So
Right.
especially Thirroul with the village, you don't find many old school locals there anymore.
Is that right? So it's gentrified.
Yeah.
So it's turned into Paddington.
It's very much Paddington by the sea.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Mm.
And so you get in your cafes. So I was going to start. That's what I want to talk to you next about. Like, people think Wollongong as the Steel City sort of thing. Like, has parts of Wollongong at least, or the area Illawarra, gentrified and turned into like parts of Sydney? Where all the cool restaurants are, and there's cool coffee shops, and there's all the cool gyms, and that's happening.
Yeah, very much so. I think that there's a very big small bar movement that's happened throughout the CBD as well.
Small bar movement.
The small bars.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah,
little tiny bars that popped up everywhere. There's the cafe lifestyle that most people are looking for, and that's right throughout the city itself.
And gyms.
Gyms, yeah.
And in terms of schools, and what do people like? Let's say some guys down there, they're relatively speaking, well off. Where do they send the kids to school? Like, have you got private schools down there?
Yeah. There's a number of private schools. There's basically public schools in almost every suburb. So there is. It's a very long stretch as well. So there is pretty much, I guess, one of everything in every town or suburb that you'll find.
Yeah, right. So there's amenity access is.
Yeah. I think we've really brushed off the days of thinking that Wollongong's this small town. It's very much a thriving community now, and it's quite a large community as well.
Yeah. So your organisation,
Yeah.
You've been selling. How long have you guys been involved in vendor acting for vendors?
I mean, me personally, I've been doing this over probably 20 years, so
Yeah.
23-ish years, and we started our brand probably 4 to 5 years ago now.
Right. So, and what's demand like now down there? What's the buyer demand like?
It's changed in the last couple of months, like it's changed anywhere.
Yeah.
It certainly has. That fear of missing out has gone, but the demand has certainly outstripped supply in every year in the last 10, 15 years.
And do you think, are we talking about like bloodshed down there, like some people are talking about here in Sydney, or is it just, maybe just going to come back a bit and kick off again? What do you think?
Look, I think we've seen the hard stuff. The hard stuff has generally gone. So now we're sort of just, I think the media again is really starting to hype it up that it is a bloodbath, but I don't think we're seeing that. I think we've seen the markets come back a little bit. We've come back from that. We're educating our vendors, and I think it's smooth sailing from here.
Yeah. So okay, you're that's interesting. So you're in the John McGrath school. John reckons we're at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
In the clock. So in other words, we're at halfway point. We probably haven't got much more of a dip. It's just going to keep moving up from now on.
Yeah.
Whereas I spoke to Damien Cooley. Damien Cooley thinks we're at 1:15. We've got a fair way to go. And it's interesting. We've got different schools, I thought. Is it because you think that perhaps your district, Illawarra area, is more affordable just generally, and therefore interest rates don't have such a big effect?
I think it still has an effect. I think it comes down to supply and demand too. We're in a very secluded area. When I say secluded, I mean between
boundaries.
The mountains. Yeah, the boundaries really dictate where we can buy and sell.
Yeah, because you can't go north because there's a national park.
Yep.
You can probably go south, but you can't go west because of the mountains there.
You can't go east.
And you can't go east because that's the sea.
Yeah, so
unless you go to New Zealand.
Exactly. So you've really only got a couple of ways that you can go. So if you want to live in Bulli or Thirroul or places like that, there is a very small community there. So if you're opening up massive tracts of land and subdividing places like they are in West Sydney or different areas, the supply and demand changes. So we've got a very small supply and a very, very large demand.
So you wouldn't be getting many new developments there at all?
No.
And at a council's... Is it one council? Is it Wollongong Council?
Yeah.
Oh, it's one council.
Yep.
So are they trying to increase density? Are they sort of saying, look, we can't go west or north or east? Are they saying, is there a view that maybe we've got to start building more apartments?
Yeah, I think that view has been there for a while. So
Right.
if you look at the the Wollongong CBD at the moment, there's a lot of cranes. So they're certainly trying to increase the level of population within the city itself. The outer skirts probably not so much.
Right.
But if you look south of Wollongong, there's places like West Dapto that are opening up. There's more land estates there.
Right. So that would sort of indicate to me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that would tell me that the value of a house in the guts of Wollongong is going to keep going up and up and up, because it's going to become more of a rarer piece of real estate, because they're going to start putting apartments everywhere, or more townhouses or something, duocs or whatever it is they can do. So they tell me like house values, land values is going to be very important.
Yeah, very much so.
And where's your demand coming from now? Like, are you still getting people moving from Sydney down there?
There still is the Sydney element, but there's a lot of people buying and selling within. So there's people that have made good money in real estate over the last couple of years, and they're probably upgrading or downsizing as well. There's a big downsizer market in our area.
Right, downside. You mean selling an expensive place and buying a cheaper place?
Yep.
Like
Buying a smaller home.
like to retire type of thing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
really, it's happening in Wollongong as well. It's happening.
Yeah.
And
Across
people
the
are
board.
saying, I've got a $2 million, $3 million joint. I don't need that much invested. I'll buy $1 million place and I'll bank some money.
Yeah.
But well, I mean, you said earlier, they can get a pretty good house for $1 million. Now, what are the people who are downselling? I mean, what sort of money are they talking about? I mean, what's a big price down there?
Look, we were, I guess, probably 3 months ago, we were talking fives for homes now. So the $5 million bracket was probably your beachfronts.
Yep.
So, and then it came back from there. So every street you went back, it got a little bit more affordable. Most of the properties in the general suburbs are sitting between, I guess, 1 and 2. The further north you go, it's 2+, and then you go up to about 5. There's been a lot of sales above that, but that's generally the market there.
So what do you think is going to happen? So, you're at 6 o'clock, you're in the John McGrath sort of squad. Tom Panos is there too. You're in the 6 o'clock. In other words, we're past the worst. What do you think is going to happen by, say, I'm a buyer in your area. When do you think I should start looking at buying now, or look at investment buy I'm talking about now, or should I be looking maybe February next year? What do you reckon?
I think the answer to that is by the time that if you've waited too long, you're on the upswing.
Yeah.
So you should be looking now. There's no doubt in my mind, probably the next 6 to 12 months is where all the bargains are going to happen. But you don't just rush in just because you want to buy something. You've got to find the right one, educate yourself on the market. But I think the next 6 to 12 months is the perfect time. And after that, I don't think you'll find any more bargains.
Right. And someone like you, like your inventory is vendors.
Yep.
You need vendors. And do you think is inventory high now?
Yeah, because days on market are blowing out. So if a property went to market this time last year, it probably would have stayed on the market a week.
A week?
Yep. Yeah, so things across the board were, and if they were going to auction, they'd probably get to auction, so it'd blow it out a little bit, but we're talking 3 to 4 weeks. We're not talking now 3 to 4 months. So average days on the market are generally hovering around 47 days.
Now?
Yep.
Now. So it's gone from from 7 days to 47 days?
Yep.
That's a factor of, 5 times, 6 times. So that's very interesting. So, and are vendors, and I think you said this right at the beginning, but vendors are starting to become conditioned as to the fact that it's a buyer's market and they shouldn't be trying to get what they were getting a year ago.
Yeah, I think the media's done that for us. So we can pretty much understand that most people in any market know what's happened in the market, at least just from turning on the news. But if they're educated enough, they go to the market with eyes wide open. And most properties now, I think your days on market are going to start to lessen for that reason.
Do you see much distress selling yet?
Not really, no. I have had a lot of buyers waiting for that to happen. They're sort of saying, well, we're just going to wait to see all the real distress. But I think we've seen one in the last 3 months.
So would you say, I have one final question for you, Trevor. Would you say the investor market, in other words, the rental market for an investor buying a property and wanting to rent it out, is as solid as it is across Australia generally? Because we're seeing there's a 40% shortfall in supply at the moment across Australia of rental properties. Is the same happening down in Wollongong?
Yeah, very much so. So what's happening is people aren't buying, so they're sticking put in their rentals. and they might be moving around within the rental market, but the rental market then goes up. So the sales market might be coming off the boil, but everyone moves their money to rentals then. So your investors are very happy right now.
Right. So it's probably a good time to invest in Wollongong.
Very much so.
Yeah. So and do you get slightly better returns in Wollongong than you say in City? You're probably getting 3.5% rental yield on a residential property. What are we looking at down in Wollongong?
Different areas do different things.
Right.
So you'll find in the CBD when there are apartments and things like that very similar, but then there's less capital growth. If you move into the house market in the northern suburbs, then you've got really good capital growth and probably not as strong rental yields.
So what are you looking at, like 4% like yields on apartments in the city, or
around that?
Yeah. So
not quite.
Yeah, so it's sort of a little bit better than what you get on the bank.
Yep.
But with a little bit of upside terms in terms of capital growth.
Yeah, but if you look at the little cottages, let's say on the beach, that everyone wants to try and get, you might sit in there and get next to nothing in rent, but it's going up in value. That's far increasing the rent.
Because it's never going to be replaced. That's the point.
Yeah.
And are you're getting all the... One final question. I have to ask you this question. Are you getting all the, like, is it getting to like Byron Bay sort of categories like Watergoes Beach and all those sorts of places where you're getting all these super wealthy people from Sydney coming in and just saying, I'm going to buy the block of land on the beach and I'm going to just build my mansion there, like my getaway mansion?
Yeah.
Or have you kept your character?
I think we have, to a degree. So we don't have those huge mansions where people take up 3 blocks and they build a whopping big house on it. We have a lot of affluent people, but we don't have the mega rich, which is a good thing and a bad thing sometimes.
Yeah. That sort of keeps the character of the joint. Because I mean, Wollongong to me has a beachy, sort of relaxed, cool character to me. That's what it feels like.
It's slowly changing. It's evolving from that. So there's a lot of professional people in Wollongong, whereas it used 10 years ago, you would see surfboards on every car and things like that too. Maybe even longer than that, but that's the sort of vibe that you're getting.
Yeah, I used to go down. I used to surf down there at Stanwell Park, and I used to go on to Coaldale and all those sort of places.
Yeah.
When I was 15 years of age, my mum dropped me and 2 of my mates down to Coaldale Beach. And we were mad surfers, and we stayed. We had a little tent. We pitched a little tent just like on a grassy knoll near the beach, and there was a big storm going, and it was massive waves, and it was pretty treacherous. Of course, like in those days, we were fearless. So we went out surfing and everything like that. And I'll never forget. We're all in our. It was the middle of winter, so it must have been like school holidays in winter or something, and we all got in our sleeping bags, and we're all zipped up, and we had a little Primus gas thing to cook our dinner, and we had like can of baked beans or something, whatever. It's something in the cans, anyway. We just had to boil some water. Well, one of my mates knocked over the Primus and the fucking tent caught alight. And we were trying to get out of this 2-man tent, 3 of us in a 2-man tent. But my zip got caught on my zip got stuck in my sleeping bag, and I was sort of trying to crawl out of this tent like that. The whole tent caught fire. No mobile phones, of course, in those days, and we were stuck there the whole night, pissing down, raining, and one of us eventually managed to get, the next day, found a telephone booth, rang our parents up, and they come pick us up. It was so lucky we didn't burn ourselves down. Yeah. But those days, that was like remote. Coaldale was considered remote.
Yeah, it's not anymore.
No, they'd be big prices at Coaldale, because all those places overlook the sea.
Yeah, and there's basically one road in, one road out.
Yeah, totally.
They're all on cliff fronts, or they're all on beach fronts, and they're very sought after properties now.
Yeah, Austinmere, Coaldale, they're great areas. I love them. I used to love going down there. Well, Trevor, thanks very much for coming. Illawarra, I'm not surprised what you say. As you say, it's closer to Sydney. It has its own infrastructure anyway to maintain employment, for that matter. Tradies would love it for sure. I can just see that being a real tradie territory. I can imagine lots of money being made down there over the last couple of years. It's an area we tend not to think about. We tend to think about Gosford, Newcastle, as I said earlier, Byron Bay and all those sorts of areas, Coffs Harbour. But Wollongong could be a bit of a sleeper, and one we haven't considered. So thanks very much for coming in, Trevor.
No problem. Thank you.
All the best, Dad.
Cheers.